problem isn't that Africa is poor. The problem is that wealth is being hoarded. Growth is happening, but inequality is stealing its power. Inequality is holding back Africa's fight against poverty. Africa's economies have been growing, yet poverty remains stubbornly high. For millions, the benefits of that growth never arrive. The reason often comes down to inequality. In countries where wealth is unevenly distributed, even strong economic growth does little to reduce poverty. Economists call this the growth elasticity of poverty, a measure of how much poverty falls when income rises. In unequal societies, a 1% increase in average income barely dents poverty levels. But in more equal nations, that same growth can make a real impact, cutting poverty by up to 6 times as much. Recent research by DuPont and Roy, published in 2024, explains how inequality traps people in poverty. These so-called poverty traps are self-reinforcing cycles driven by limited savings, poor access to finance, and weak public institutions. When families can't get loans, attend good schools, or access quality healthcare, they remain stuck. Evidence from 48 sub-Saharan African countries supports this. Government spending targeted at health, education, and welfare consistently reduced poverty. Foreign investment helped too, but expanding the money supply without strengthening financial systems did little to improve life on the ground. Growth alone isn't enough when its rewards are captured by the top few. Inequality ensures that progress skips over those who need it most. Africa is home to immense wealth, but that wealth is deeply concentrated. As of 2025, just 4 individuals hold more wealth than the poorest 375 million Africans combined. Since 2020, the top 1% have seen their incomes rise 5 times faster than the bottom half of the population. In just 5 years, billionaires on the continent have grown their fortunes by 56%. Governments have powerful tools to address this imbalance, yet most are not using them. According to Oxfam, African countries rank among the least committed in the world to reducing inequality. Policies such as progressive taxation, universal social services, and income support remain severely underused. Change is possible, and some countries are proving it. Namibia, South Africa, and Seychelles have all taken steps to reduce inequality. The financial potential for change is massive. Oxfam estimates that a 1% wealth tax and a 10% tax on the richest incomes could raise $66 billion each year. That's enough to fund universal access to electricity and education across the entire continent. Inequality is not an unavoidable outcome of growth. It reflects political decisions, and it can be corrected through better ones. The legacy of neocolonialism still shapes African economies. The end of colonial rule did not mark the end of colonial influence. Many African economies are still shaped by extractive systems built during that era. Oxfam in Africa highlights the ongoing dominance of multinational corporations, unfair trade rules, and widespread tax avoidance. Wealth continues to flow out of the continent through illicit financial channels, while local industries remain underdeveloped and underfunded. Resource extraction firms often pay very little in taxes, leaving governments with few resources to invest in their people. Today, wealth is increasingly concentrated among those with inherited fortunes, political connections, or monopolistic advantages. These aren't new forms of prosperity. They are modern versions of old power structures. As a result, many African nations remain dependent on low-value exports and trapped in cycles of debt and underdevelopment. The promise of independence remains unfulfilled when economic systems still serve outside interests and domestic elites. Debt, austerity, and the cost of cutting back debt is once again weighing heavily on African countries, and the consequences are severe. Inequality still runs deep, and the fight is far from won. In part 3, we dive even deeper exposing the forces that keep Africa's future in chains.